All right, hello. Waiting for a couple of people to drop into the stream. Moving my studio desk, which is actually my patio table. All right, we got one in the stream. We're ready to start going. How are you tonight? I hope you're doing well. I hope you are safe at home. All right, we're just going to jump into it. Oh, we got two people in the stream. Fantastic. Hey, guys. Welcome to the Daily Faded. I'm Hetz. And I'm really happy you're here with me tonight to smoke some cannabis, have a drink, whatever you might want to do at home, and talk through the news of the day. It was a big news day. There was plenty going on. Let me express my extreme gratitude that you're here with me and keeping you in mind in solidarity as we go through this pandemic crisis. So, I don't have anything funny to start off with. Worldwide, the number of coronavirus cases is over 474,000 people, which is an increase of over 7.5% from yesterday. The number of deaths worldwide is over 21,000 people, which is an over 10% increase from yesterday. In the United States, we are up to 68,207 confirmed cases, which is a 24% increase from yesterday. And we have 1,034 deaths, which is a 31% increase from yesterday. Depending on how much Italy increases tomorrow, and their percentage increases have been going down over the last couple of days, we may well overtake Italy and become the second highest confirmed cases in the world tomorrow. If not, we certainly will the day after, and probably the day after that, the highest. We will surpass China, which only had a couple of new cases today. 184 out of 195 nations are infected. I'm going to talk about Donald Trump for a little while, but not a long while. There was a Gallup survey showing 60% approval of Trump's handling of the pandemic, with a 49% overall approval rating, which is the highest overall approval rating of his presidency. And today's excuse me. Today's Daily Fail goes to Donald Trump as well. For tweeting about Mitt Romney testing negative, quote, "This is really great news, exclamation point. I am so happy I can barely speak. He may have been a terrible presidential candidate and an even worse U.S. senator, but he is a rhino, and I like him a lot." This kind of juvenile behavior in the middle of a crisis is, I'm not the biggest fan of Mitt Romney, but he just, one day after another with this guy, it's new bottoms every day, it seems. I did watch the press conference, which was pretty short today. It was a lot of lies and misinformation about making the same progress that they've been talking about the last couple of days. Repeated the same things over and over again. Talked about the Javits Center in New York. lied about how much testing we're doing. At no time in the press conference does Trump acknowledge the increase in cases or deaths. Everything's going along swimmingly. We're doing a great job. No one's ever done anything like this before. They didn't think it was possible previously. And he doesn't talk about how many Americans are dying right now from this fucking thing. Nothing about isolation or staying at home. No straight talk about the pandemic. He bragged about our military and about how he's rebuilt the military, that favorite chestnut of his. He talked about NATO payments and how he's gotten the NATO members to pay more, as if that has any relevance whatsoever. And I always think of the sales saying, always be selling when it comes to Trump, because he's always selling. He's always selling how awesome he is. He's always selling how, what a great job he's doing. He's always selling to get reelected. And then Mnuchin went up there and talked about the Senate deal, which I'll get into later. He may have accurately described the details of the deal, but he did not contextualize them properly, which we'll try to do a little bit later on. Gavin Newsom announced today that Wells Fargo, U.S. Bank, Citibank, and JP Morgan Chase have agreed to a 90-day waiver for residential mortgage payments. So if your mortgage is with one of those banks, you can get a waiver, apparently. B of A has only agreed to a 30-day waiver because they are B of A and they're a bunch of assholes. Although really you'd expect, if anyone was going to be the biggest asshole, you'd expect it to be Wells Fargo. But I'm not particularly a big fan of any of those banks. So he also said that he might take action. Ghetto bird. He also said he might take action on rent, which is good because rent is due in 7 days for a lot of people. Kyle Kalinske did a very good video today about the UK response to coronavirus. The government there is paying 80% of payroll for all the corporations, all the companies, all the businesses, similar to what we talked about the other night about Denmark. But I thought the more interesting, I think that's great. I wish we were doing something a little bit more like that. But the other thing he talked about that I thought was really terrific was that since the hotels are all empty, London Mayor Sadiq Khan is renting out hotel rooms in large blocks and putting homeless people there, or as they call them in England, rough sleepers. Sorry. So, that's kind of a win-win. The hotels can use the business, and, it gets the rough sleepers off the street during this crisis. So Gavin Newsom has talked about doing that kind of a thing in California. I don't know how scalable it is. I don't know how quickly they can get something like that up and running. We'll see. Representative Jim Banks, Republican from Indiana, and Seth Moulton, Democrat from Massachusetts, who actually ran for president last year, introduced a non-binding resolution into the House of Representatives, I think yesterday, which blames China for the coronavirus and demands of China that they make a statement that the coronavirus did not originate any place other than China. And chastises China for several things they did wrong at the beginning of the outbreak, including misinformation or cover-ups. I think that that's ridiculous. we need to be working together with China. We need to be working together with the entire international community on this thing. And we're going to need advice from China. I know we're already getting some, but we need them. They need us and we need them. And blaming them for this is not, I don't think it's cool. During the Trump press conference, which was really useless. It was short and it was useless. Someone asked him about a UN effort to ban live animal food places like they have in China. I don't know if there should be an international ban on that or not. I don't really have an opinion on it. I'm certainly, I don't know that doing that would stop these diseases from coming into existence. I think it's short-sighted to assign too much responsibility to that. So I watched Joe Biden's press conference this morning. That was the first of the many press conferences that I watched today. And it was the most boring. At least Trump is infuriating and gives me something to get angry about. Joe Biden came out talking about millennials and Zoomers and what they're going through and what their life experience is like and trying to relate to them and connect to them. And, he said he wants to make sure that younger people don't come out of this crisis behind the 8 ball. And it, to me, it just sounded like falling on deaf ears to talk to this man about where people are at, because a lot of millennials are already behind the 8 ball with 6 figures of student loan debt, with service industry jobs and degrees in something else. And then he talked about how he wanted to relieve $10,000 worth of student loan debt, and if you're in public service like a teacher, you could relieve $10,000 a year in student loan debt for 5 years, totaling $50,000. And that's all well and good. I don't agree with it from a standpoint of, I think we should just abolish all the student loan debt. But he talked about making public use. Sorry for the yawning. I'm tired again tonight. I was up last night. I couldn't sleep. All of this coronavirus shit, all of this news, too much to handle, too much to deal with. I'm gonna have to watch Star Wars after I finish tonight. Excuse me, guys. Excuse me. He talked about free public college when you're going to public college in your state. I think he intends that for people who make $125,000 a year or less, or families that make $125,000 a year or less. He criticized Trump a lot for his handling of COVID-19, but once again, he didn't suggest a comprehensive vision for how the country moves forward during or after this crisis. He was asked about debating Bernie Sanders, and because Bernie was questioned, Bernie stated earlier in the day that he expected to be there for the last Democratic debate in April, which is pre-scheduled. And Joe Biden said, no, we should be done with the primary. Despite the fact that 26 states and territories have not voted yet, he said, no, we should just be done with the primary. So I don't know if that means he's not going to debate Bernie. Maybe that is what it means. I think The debate is important, even if Bernie is so far behind that he can't win at this point, because I think it's important to continue to push the progressive platform items and try and continue to push the party to the left. So also, I think it's worth letting people hear one more time what these two guys stand for. I did watch the Nicole Wallace interview and the Jake Tapper interview, and this morning he was fine. Joe was fine this morning. You know, I didn't necessarily like all the things he had to say, but he was fine. He seemed compos mentis. But he was not good on Nicole Wallace yesterday. He was completely confused. She was fawning over him, and she was asking him easy questions, and he couldn't answer them without contradicting himself. You know, it was not good. And then he was on Jake Tapper, and he was coughing into his hand, and Jake Tapper recommended he cough into his elbow, and he said it's okay. I'm alone here, which is obviously not true. Someone is running the camera. Oh God, I'm sorry for all the yawning, you guys. I know that sucks. I hope I'm not making you yawn through the computer. Now we get to the Senate stimulus package. At Neon Wave tweeted, a $1,200 check for me to pay to the corporations that I owe money to, who are already getting a bailout and writing off my debt as a tax loss. I thought that tweet summed it up pretty well. And I think, oh, God damn. I don't know what the House is going to do with the Senate legislation. I'm expecting them to pass it with relatively little argument. But David Dayen wrote a great article in the American Prospect about this Senate bill today. He wrote, quote, the enormity of this bailout is being underreported. The number you're hearing is $500 billion. Of that, $75 billion goes to the airline industry and the mysteriously named businesses critical to national security. The other $425 billion helps capitalize $4.25 trillion with a T leveraged lending facility at the Federal Reserve. The taxpayer dollars would soak up any losses from that lending program. The loans won't be secret anymore, but the oversight is largely after the fact without subpoena power and mainly reduced to writing reports. How exactly do you expect a small underfunded panel to find fraud in a $4.25 trillion lending facility? Especially when the current administration explicitly believes they are not required to turn anything over to Congress. I think this is a really important point. There is also an inspector general, but so that's 6 people trying to keep track of $4.25 trillion in loans to companies and industries. Quote, there's apparently only a buyback ban for the term of the loan. The money cannon can therefore go to executive compensation or mergers or wholesale purchases of distressed businesses or whatever other financial engineering the accounting department can muster. And once the company returns to health, it can leak out cash to investors and during the loan too in dividends. There's no requirement to keep workers hired. In fact, the necessary provision to boost unemployment insurance for 4 months to 100% of median salary, including furloughed workers, gig workers, and freelancers, means that these companies can fire with relative impunity. Remember, these are also businesses that got massive tax cuts and a huge windfall from the tax cuts, and they proceeded to do stock buybacks and inflate their stock value when they could have recapitalized their companies for a rainy day in the future. But they did not. Most of these companies did not recapitalize. And in fact, I think something that's not going reported particularly well in the economic half of this crisis is the debt issue. Most of corporate America is over leveraged. With the interest rates so low, they've taken on a lot of debt. Consumer debt is over $1 trillion. Medical debt is around $100 million. And of course, student loan debt is, I don't know how much medical debt is. Don't quote me on that, but it's a lot. And of course, student loan debt is $1.6 trillion. So, you know, the amount that the average American household has in debt and is paying on its debt is problematic in an economic crunch. And maybe the one-time payment in this bill, and maybe the maybe the unemployment insurance expansion, which is actually quite good, maybe that will cover people, but it's really hard to know. It's really hard to know. David Dan continued, "This is a rubber stamp on an unequal system that has brought terrible hardship to the majority of America. The people get a $1,200 means-tested payment and a little wage insurance for 4 months. Corporations get a transformative amount of play money to sustain their system and wipe out the competition. Small businesses get their own program and can't participate in the $4.3 trillion bonanza. They get $300 billion, so do the math on who's supported more. They get forgivable loans if they keep staff on payroll. There's no such requirements for the large corporations. Also, $150 billion for state and local governments. I noticed that was a little bit low. I saw Stephanie Kelton had calculated that it should be a $600 billion bailout to the states and local governments. Also, $130 billion for hospitals, although most of it goes towards lost income because they're not doing the normal surgeries that would provide their income. They're doing emergency surgeries, so that whole situation feels like it's very messy. They said the checks. They said the money will go out in 3 weeks. But we'll see whether or not they actually pull that off. That's 3 weeks, assuming the IRS has your direct deposit information from your 2018 or your 2019 taxes. Sorry, had to shut Ludwig up. Ludwig. If they don't have your direct deposit, then it could take considerably longer. Some people were saying it could take up to 4 months. Some congressional aides who were quoted in one article I read. There's no student loan freeze, no foreclosure moratoriums, no rent freezes, no student loan forbearance. No free treatment for COVID-19. The big bragging point for the Democrats was that no bailout money can go to any Trump family company. That's hardly something to celebrate, since and it's also could not go to any business owned by a member of Congress or a member of the Trump administration. So that's good. That's good, because it would have all gotten funneled into their own pockets otherwise. It still might in favors and payback and stuff like that. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so tired. Look, the unemployment expansion is the largest unemployment expansion in the history of the country, and that's good. and it covers gig workers and it covers furloughed workers. They did their best to cover as many people as possible. They do not cover undocumented Americans, which I think they should, because we are all as vulnerable as they are. So leaving them vulnerable in this time is not useful for society. So people need to put their racism aside, and we need to take care of the undocumented. Um, there were no reforms to aid the incarcerated population. Uh, and I feel like this bailout is largely what I've been predicting for the last week or two, which is a repeat of the mistakes that we made in 2008 when we gave huge bailouts to Wall Street and to corporate America, and we did nothing for Main Street. And, what is it? 7 million jobs were lost, or 7 million homes were lost, and 8 million jobs. It's one is 8 and one is 7. I don't remember which is which. But, and there was no more additional stimulus coming for the American people after that. And I think this is incredibly flawed in its conception. And I don't think it's enough. I don't think it's enough money to working families and working people who are, in many cases, locked down at home, and they're scared and they might be getting sick and life might be about to get really difficult for them. So, this is what capitalism does. It protects capital. There's a reason that they put the unemployment insurance in the same legislation as the massive corporate Wall Street bailout, because they wanted it to pass, because they knew that if they gave the Democrats enough unemployment expansion, then the Democrats would have to vote for it. And I believe even Bernie is voting for it. He was very critical of it in speaking tonight. And I just got to say, seeing Biden and Trump and Bernie all speak in the same day, there's only one of them who really seems to know what he's talking about, and it's Bernie. There's certainly only one who I really agree with, and it's Bernie. So it's frustrating. It's very frustrating that our system works the way our system works. But I don't need to get into that tonight. I did have some other stuff to talk about, but I'm low energy and I don't want to put you to sleep. So I'm going to call it a night. Oh, boy. Yeah, I can't do this other story tonight. Maybe I'll do it tomorrow night. We'll see. Anyway, peace out. Have a good night. And I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you for watching.